So we talked a lot about Islamic economics and finance and why it is a good, very good solution to the problems that people face. The question then I think people will have is, well, why haven't the Muslims done it? If it's so brilliant, like why are these so many Muslim majority nations looking a lot like, either they're kind of not very developed, or if they're developed, they tend to use Western type financing. So I guess my question is modern Islamic banking Islamic?
Well, you will know from what I've written that I'm not a fan of modern Islamic banking. I think that you cannot have Islamic vodka. Given what I've said about banking, if banking is by nature a fraudulent thing, and I'm talking about the money-creating commercial bank, then we cannot have an Islamic version of that. And I think that's an inescapable conclusion. However, we do need a payment system. I have got no problem if a private company sets up a debit card or keeps my valuables safe or gives me financial advice or sets up an equity portfolio for me. I've got no problem with that. But to create money out of nothing and then finance people as they, I put it in inverted commas because Islamic banks are saying that they're financing people without charging interest. My view is that they are charging interest but not calling it by the same name. And you add that to the fact that the money they're financing you with has been created out of nothing. I see the two same essential problems that we have in the secular-based banking system.
Right.
And until we have Islamic financial institutions, let's not call them banks, Islamic payment processors or whatever. Until we have Islamic payment processors that A, do not create money from nothing, and B, when they use that money for their customers, they provide it to their customers in a way that is not interest based,
not a mudaraba commodity contract.
It could be a profit sharing contract, or it could be that the Islamic payments company builds a house and then sells it to you on installments. Right, because there cannot be usury in a goods for money transaction. That's a principle of Islamic law. If I sell you a house for £150,000 payable over 10 years, that's fine. That's an installment sale that's been accepted since the word dot. What Islamic banks tend to do is that they say, you want to buy a house, which one is it? And you point to that one, and I say, okay, I'll buy this for 100,000 as long as you buy it from me for 150,000. So I take that house, all contracts signed, I transfer it to you, you pay me 150,000 over 10 years. What effectively has happened is that I, the bank, have given 100,000 there in return for 150,000 later from you. Now, that process, all bundled up in one transaction, has the same cash flow reality as a loan of 100,000 in return for 150,000 later.
And it's interesting because that's exactly what how the early Christians got around their prohibitions on interest as well, the contractum trinius.
They had a system of combining contracts in Islamic banking. Today it's you promise that if I buy, that's contract number 2, you will buy from me. So promise, I buy, you buy. 3 contracts bundled up into one, creates the same cash flow reality for an Islamic bank that the interest-based bank will have. Lend 100,000 there in return for 150,000 later from you. Right? Now, whatever you call this in terms of names, the cash flows are the same. And that is the criticism I have of Islamic banking. Because 90% of what's going on is that kind of transaction.
I was going to ask,
really, 90%?
I would say 90%. I mean, some banks, I was working for one major Saudi bank as a trainer telling them how these things work, which I don't have a problem with. I mean, I don't mind explaining how they work, but I just won't do them. But the thing is that I saw on their balance sheet that 80% of their business was this buy and sell. Right? And just a very few, most of the rest was leasing. I'll buy an aircraft and lease it to you, for example. And a tiny, tiny proportion was share transactions.
Profit sharing.
Was actually going to the ordinary person?
Yeah, no, less than 1%. It was actually the profit sharing kind of, I'll finance your business and share the profits or loss. So, less than 1% there and 80% in this triple contract. The Christians did do the same thing. It was called the contractum trinius. It worked slightly differently. But there were essentially 3 contracts bundled up into one. each of those individual contracts the Christian law permitted, but when you combined them, they gave the substance of an interest-bearing loan.
Yes.
So, there's nothing new under the sun, and I've written about it and said to the guys, look, you can do what you like, it's a free world, but don't give people the impression that what you're doing is the Islamic answer to the financial problems of our time, because you're just going to lose it for us. No one will have any respect for this, but more people will think, oh, Islam doesn't have the answer.
Yeah.
And that's not a good thing.
Yeah.